filthy you can get. And you know, and you're eating food, and you're also eating whatever's on you. You know. I know another time we came to a town there, and there was a little cigar factory. And I know I wasn't really into it, but I found that working with, especially in the summer with the dust and dirt, if I had a small cigar I just chewed on, it kind of took away the terrible thirst all the time. So I looked kind of tough with a cigar sticking out of the side of my mouth. Not a big one, they had shorter ones, it seemed to me. But it was, in the summer we were sweating hot and dirty from the dust and so forth, and then in the rain, of course, you never seem to get dry. You're just wet and cold from the cold rain. And then, of course, the winter was that was brutal, having to work out in that. But again, we weren't outside all the time. We had places we were able to get into along the way. In fact, one place where I didn't ever told you this, but one thing we were able to do, I can't even tell you where it happened, but when your number comes up, you could. It was like a lottery, constant lottery, where you were given pass to go back to Paris, and I did, with one other guy. I don't even remember what the guy's name was. We went back to Paris, and I think I even have a picture going on a tour. You know, I went to the Notre Dame Cathedral, and I don't know what all around. We did it. There was a regular tour bus that took us around, and I enjoyed that. And then, of course, sitting on the. Gay and I did this ourselves. We were on the Champs-Élysées and sat and watched all those. There were these sidewalk cafes and places, and I drank some beer and had some food, whatever they could get. And of course, by that time, that's later on in the war. By that time, they got some food again in the city of in Paris. But of course, things were getting back to normal there. But then I knew I had to go back to the dirty war again, and that wasn't too much fun. But I only got one pass to Paris, and that's as far as I can remember about the gay old city. I've forgotten, I think, to tell you. You heard the story, of course, about getting run over by the road grader and so forth, and that really was the major thing that happened to me. When you stack that up in comparison to all the carnage around me, that was just nothing. But there was one other thing. There was one shell, one of the times, and I don't even know when it was, except that the shell went off, and I got just a tick, tiny little thing just on the top of my right hand knuckles, just a scratch, really. But it was a scratch from probably something flying. Could have been some shrapnel, I don't know. All I know is that it caused a little bleeding. See, my hand was bleeding, so I had a hanky or something in my pocket, and I wrapped that around there and just didn't pay any attention to it, and kept working and doing. And of course, you're filthy, dirty. And as we let me stop here. As I say, I was working and paying no attention to this little scratch. And wouldn't you know, after a day or two, with not washing and so forth, I got blood poisoning. The hand started to get bigger and bigger and fatter, and it throbbed a bit. And then I'm working along, and somebody said, look at the inside of your hand and up your arm, and here were these two red lines going up my arm, and then underneath my right armpit, there was this big ball or something. It was getting really sore, and I was very uncomfortable. So I went to an aid guy, first aid guy, and he said, "Holy smokes, you got to go to the hospital." So, so at that time we were fairly near a major hospital in a big town. So that had it wasn't a German hospital. I mean a French hospital or German. It was an American hospital, and I went into town. I had to walk for quite a ways, as I recall, to where a guy took me in a jeep to the hospital, and I get in there, and they take me right into the and strip me down like they would here at a hospital, and put me under. I remember this very way they did it. They put a shot in my arm, and then they said count, or rather a tube in my arm, and they said count from 10 down, and I got 10, 9, and I was out cold. When I woke up, they had operated on my hand because I had blood poison, and they had I don't know what all they did. All I know is my hand was wrapped in a huge bandage. It looked like a boxing glove. It was so big and wrapped tight, and then I woke up in the hospital ward. And again, I say this was such a minor thing, but of course it could have killed me, I guess. I wasn't that understanding of this at all. But here's the story goes on there too. I remember one thing. While I was there, of course, I got to know some guys around me, and one guy, he was an officer, and he had his hands, both of his hands were badly burned in a crash that he was an Air Force pilot, and he was in really bad shape. But I thought to myself, here's my little thing here, and this guy's got hands that probably never work again, you know. And he was still talking about, well, they'll fix me up enough, I'm going to get back in an airplane again, you know, go back into it. Well, that's a lot of hooey too. But anyway, after a few days, I don't recall how many days I was there, but you know, now I have a brand new uniform again, because all the dirty stuff that was on me was burned, I guess, or whatever they do with it. And then I had a guy put on my stripes. You have to sew them on your uniform, and anyway, they had a dance. The nurses, these were regular Army female nurses, and they had a dance at the hospital or somewhere nearby, and I said, well, shoot, I'm going to go to this dance. So I went over there, and I was dancing with different nurses or girls or whatever, and enjoying myself, and all of a sudden I looked down, and somehow I had bumped the back of my hand. You know, it was covered with all this gauze, but I bumped it enough to make it bleed again. The whole thing was just bloody. In fact, I think the back of one of the nurses, I must have put blood all over it. But boy, did they rush me out of there, and were they mad at me for even going to this dance, you know. But they had to take all this bandage off and put it on again fresh, and clean the wound again, and I don't know, but it took a while for that thing to heal up completely, but it wasn't too much longer, and I was back with my outfit. But that was my own. I probably could have gotten a Purple Heart for that, because there was no way to identify how it happened, except it was in the war, and it was in where shelling and things were taking place. But can you imagine these guys getting cut to pieces all over, you know, I mean, just horrible, losing limbs and everything. And here, out of the whole war, I had that run over, which didn't hurt my leg that bad in the end. And here, one little nick on my hand. That's the only. It's like a souvenir from the war. So it's just the Lord's doing all the way along. He protected me from severe loss, or loss of life, actually, many times. So the Lord was with me, and I thank Him every day that He allowed me to live through that carnage. And then I remember another time when Duck and I, we had come into a little village, and we parked, and we were going to stay there a day or two. So Duck and I always went around the neighborhood and looked. We did a little exploration around to see what was around. And we were walking down one street, and we heard somebody yell out a window upstairs, and we looked up, and there was some guy waving to come up to his, come up the stairs. So we went up, and here it was a nice man and his wife and 2 children that lived in this apartment. It wasn't much, but it was and the man had been in the French Foreign Legion, and he had all kinds of pictures and things showing. But he was an older guy, so he evidently was hurt in some way, because he wasn't capable of being in the military anymore anyway. But they just treated us nice. I thought it was they served us some wine, and they had some little cake thing that the lady had made, and they just wanted to be nice to American soldiers. It was a kind of that wasn't very normal, but during the war the people were nice to us. But of course nowadays the French don't like us, and neither do the English, I don't think. But that was a kind of a rare little vignette, and we enjoyed that time. But early on, jumping back and forth, but back in the beginning, in the summer, as we go through towns, we'd have to slow down, because you can't. There's turns to make, and it was kind of tight. As I mentioned before, at one time, our big scoop took off the bottom floor of one house, while the people upstairs are waving at us. Well, but the people were very nice mostly along the way, and they'd come out and they'd throw flowers at us, and they'd give us, as we had to stop and slow down and stuff, that they would come over and give us a little glass of wine or whatever they had. They were so happy to be liberated from the Germans. They really were appreciative, and so that was kind of fun. We weren't personally heroes. At least I didn't ever feel like I was one, but they sure figured we were, and it's good. Those were kind of joyful times between the bombing and the carrying on, when you were able to have a few moments going through a town like that. I don't remember if I mentioned this before, but going along the road, we were about ready to stop for the night, and right alongside where I had parked my vehicle, here lays a big German a motorcycle. It looked like a Harley or something. It was a big machine, and it was just laying there. And of course, you have to be very cautious that when you see something tempting like that, you have to check it out real thoroughly for booby traps, because that's what the Germans would do if they couldn't. But it was simply out of gas. So I put some gas in the tank and picked it up and started the thing. Now, I am not a motorcyclist, and this is like maybe the first time I was ever on one, so I really didn't know what I was doing. But because we were parked for the night, I went zooming up and down the road, back and forth, getting the hang of it, and there were others that played with it too, and we just had a little fun with it, and finally we we got it going real fast and jumped off and let it go over a cliff so that the Germans wouldn't have it if it in case. And it got wrecked, but there's no way we're going to be able to take that along with us. So we got rid of it. As I think back, it was kind of goofy too. But there again, we're kids, right? We did kid things. And of course, as you can imagine, all the way along, especially toward the end of the war, anytime we stopped, we were mostly looking for champagne and booze and stuff, and I make no bones about it. I was no different than the rest, and enjoyed some pretty interesting wines and things as we went along. But one time I remember we stopped and went into a house that was empty. It was empty of people, but it was evidently it was the house of the head Nazi for the neighborhood or something, because it had some pretty nifty things, including I picked up an accordion, a beautiful big accordion, and I didn't know how to play it, but I remember sitting outside sipping on some of this guy's wine and playing, fooling around with this accordion and just playing it. And then I don't know whatever happened to it. We probably left it in some house or something, but you know. And then also there was one guy in our outfit was really mean cuss, and whenever he would catch the German prisoners before they went they were given up, you know, and he would take their wedding rings. I could not believe that the guy would do this. He was from another squad, but I just bugged the daylights out of me that the people would steal the guy's wedding rings. But he was mean enough to take their finger off if they didn't give it to him, I'll tell you that. But there are all kinds, you know, in this war, and everywhere, of course, in the world today. But oh yes, I remember again, this is very near the end of the war, and we came to a place that was like we would call it a ranch, a horse ranch in America, but it was a big horse breeding farm, or whatever you might say. These are all gorgeous animals, you know, and there were a couple of guys from our outfit that one of them had been a rodeo rider years and years back, and so he knew how to get on them. But the really sinful things we did, I didn't do it, but somebody did this. They let all of the mares and the stallions get together, and it's like ruining bloodstock, you know, because they were all kind of antsy that way. So I'm sure it took years to rearrange the breeding again after the war. But we weren't killing horses, but there were. I took a ride on one. All I did was jump on and hold on to the hair on his head. But it was too much horse for me. They were beautiful animals. Actually, I think it was right near there is where Patton, if you've seen the picture, where Patton saved the Lippas on her horses, you know, it was this kind of quality horses that were running around in these fields. So again, any interlude or something to do. But I'm sure that the owners of these horses were heartbroken to have these horses interbreed that they weren't working with. So it was interesting. Anyway, we had another day. It was something fun to do besides getting shot at. You know, along that same subject, there was something that some of our guys did that I just could not do. I only did it once, and that is rifling through the pockets of dead Germans. You know, all I did was I saw a gun on the belt of one. I think he was a major, and I took that home. That was that 38 that I had for some years, and then sold it. But the rest of them, these guys were going. They were taking like I said, gold rings from the hands of people, and other gems. See, everything they could carry in a tiny way and conceal on themselves, they could probably get away with. They were thinking ahead, going home. And in fact, I know of one instance where a guy had saved up so many. He found diamonds at, at different places, and valuable rings and things like this, and certainly wedding rings, and he kept them all, and he opened up a tavern with the money that he made after the war. That I recall. I don't remember the guy's name, but I know he was from Chicago. Then I got to tell you about another guy in our outfit. He was a tough guy from the south side of Chicago. His name was Sam Serena, and he drove one of the big prime mover trucks, and that usually pulled big trailers and so forth. But he also had a little game going later on in the war, where whenever the outfit needed fuel, he would go to the fuel dump and load up, and then bring the fuel back to our outfit, and then he'd drop off those 5-gallon cans, the jerry cans they used to call them, and then but then he'd make another trip and get it loaded up again, and then he made a deal with for a while in France. It was a Frenchman that he'd bring this truck into a big barn, and they'd unload it there. Here he was given the gas for francs. They were paying him for all this gasoline, and of course, that was very crooked. But I think the guy was from the mafia anyway. When he got back, because he was a tough cookie. I remember Sam Serena. But he always had a lot of loot, a lot of money on hand whenever we got to a town and he was always had the best of everything. Somehow he got fine-looking uniforms that he had made somewhere for him. He was quite a case. Now here's one of my very favorite old. This is not that old either. The falling leaves drip by my window. The autumn leaves of red and gold. I feel your lips, the summer kisses, the sunburned hands I used to hold. Since you went away, the days go long. Soon I'll hear old winter's song, but I miss you most of all, my darling. When autumn leaves start to fall.